Hello there. So today we're going to look at the two other virtues that are important in Stoicism, because in fact there are 6 key Stoic virtues. So we know all about the 4 cardinal virtues: wisdom, courage, self-control, and justice, and how important they are, and how we can look at life through the lens of the virtues, and that can be really helpful. But there are 2 other virtues that we need to know about, which we're going to tell you about today, and they are called humanity, which is altruism, caring for others, and transcendence, connecting with what is larger than us. And today we're going to be drawing on positive psychology. So I've written a book all about positive psychology, Achieve Your Potential with Positive Psychology, and the research for this was by Peterson and Seligman, and described in a huge doorstopper of a book called Character, Strengths and Virtues. So the thing is that the research project was this: 55 top scientists set forth on a 3-year mission to review the best writings on virtue and positive qualities in philosophy, virtue ethics, moral education, psychology and religion over the last 2.5 millennia. And that's what Peterson and Seligman wrote up about in that big book. And look, this is what they found. So this was an bit of empirical research that actually grouped things into 6 virtues, which were how did they decide this? Well, it were things that were almost ubiquitous amongst all societies, qualities that seemed to benefit societies as a whole, but also societies that seem to benefit the individual. So again, you've got that win-win. Society wins, humanity wins, the world wins, we win. So these are the VIA strengths, because they split them up into 24 strengths for each of the virtue groups. And you can argue about some of these things. So I saw some research recently that said that humor doesn't really belong in transcendence, it belongs in humanity, for instance. But today we're not going to focus on that. Today we're going to think about humanity and transcendence, and whether these are things consistent with Stoicism or not. And the answer is definitely yes. If we look at the Stoic literature, we will see that, in fact, these 2 virtues are crying out to be incorporated into our virtue lens. In fact, if we ignore these virtues, we're missing something. So the humanity one, a lot of writers, myself included, often wrap it up into justice, because they're kind of similar, aren't they? You know, how we deal with other people. But there is a difference. Justice is about fairness and about the distribution of well-being. And if you're just focused on that, you're going to miss out on an important bit, which is love, kindness, and compassion for everyone, regardless of fairness and regardless of distribution. So is this something that is truly Stoic? Yes, it is. In writers such as Marcus Aurelius in his Meditations, a lot of emphasis on what we could call universality, universalism, the idea that we're all parts of nature, all sharing the potential for rationality, and all worthy of compassion. And as you know by now, one of my favorite quotes is Meditations 2:1, which ends by saying, "Nor can I be angry with my kinsman, nor hate him, for we are made for cooperation, like feet, hands, like eyelids, like the rows of the upper teeth and the lower teeth. To act against one another then is contrary to nature, and it is turning against one another to be vexed and to turn away." So the idea that we are made to work with each other, we're all part of a whole. And cosmopolitanism, the idea, which of course Socrates believed in as well, you know, I'm not a citizen of Greece or the UK, I'm a citizen of the world. And this is perhaps best expressed as Heracles, another Stoic, expressed in the idea of the concentric circles, where we expand our concern from ourselves all the way through to the whole of humanity, and in this version actually to the whole of Earth. So humanity is definitely a Stoic virtue, and it's not quite the same as justice. But what about transcendence? Connecting with what is larger than us. Is this a Stoic virtue? Yes, it is. And so the Stoic worldview is a very interesting one. Some of the ideas you might agree with, some of them you might struggle with, but these are some of the key points. We're a tiny part of the world, and we may have an inflated view of our own egos, our own significance, and that may not mean we see the world as it really is. There is universal determinism, a web of causation. So what we do makes a difference. But we also have choices. We're constrained, but still have an impact if we focus on the right things. So even though there's causation and we are constrained, what we do matters. We all share the potential for rationality that is present in the whole universe. So that's an idea that there is the laws of nature, we might say, mathematics, and by being reasonable, by being rational, by being virtuous, that's how we share in the rationality that is present in the cosmos, and which we have a potential for by cultivating the virtues. So those are some ideas about worldview present in Stoicism. And it's by transcendence in particular that perhaps we can connect with some of those ideas. Now, there's a particular virtue called magnanimity, which is mentioned by Aristotle, but in Cicero's writings, we see him making actually one of the key Stoic virtues. He actually puts magnanimity in the Big Four in one of his works. Now, what does magnanimity mean in this sense? Well, it might mean what it means in our sense as well, but it seems to be a big thing. The ability to rise above the trivial. Someone insults you, you rise above it. And given the Stoic worldview, we might think that the indifferents are relatively trivial. So it would mean rising above a loss. Haddo and A.A. Long talk about Stoic consciousness and Stoic connectedness, and that would be part of transcendence. And there's a really nice article by Brittany Pollitt, which you might like to read, where she says, Stoic transcendence is an active exercise that takes us to a new level of understanding about the world. When we view a disappointing event from the point of view of the cosmos, and therefore perceive that it's not so disappointing after all, we are practicing transcendence. So, how can we get more transcendence? Well, a number of ways. We might wake up in the morning and feel a sense of awe at the sun rising. You might look at a newborn baby and get that sense of awe. But we might do things like practice the view from above. And I'll be doing a view from above meditation in a future Stoic Saturday. But if you want to see a kind of a longer version of what we're talking about, I did a kind of longer presentation, which is available on YouTube, and you can look at that there if you would like. So the message is that there are 6 virtues in Stoicism, not just 4. The 4 are very important, but how about bringing a bit more humanity and transcendence into your life? What do you think about that?